The Stanford prison experiment is an adaptation of the very popular study from 1971 that was testing the psychological effects of either someone becoming a prisoner or a guard. And chances are, if you took a psychology class, you probably have heard about this study. Even more so, there have been a lot of films that have tried to sort of not necessarily be adaptations, but were heavily influenced from the study. There's the 2001 German film called Das Experiment. There was even a 2010 American remake called The Experiment. And of course, there's a bunch of documentaries out there. This one, however, I believe is like the first major American theatrical release that's really trying to convey what happened there, really reenact what happened in that experiment. And I'm just going to put it this way. This is one of the most gripping films I have seen in the past decade. This is one of those films that while I was watching it, I was just like, this is definitely going to be in my top 10. Not that something else is going to come in and obviously fill it up later. This is going to solidify itself in the top 10 by the end of the year for me. And here is why. Starting off with the acting side of things, you have the psychologist, with the main one being Dr. Zimbardo, being portrayed by Billy Crudup, and he does a phenomenal job. One of the things in real life is that a lot of people don't like what he did with this experiment. They don't agree with the way that he did it, and they don't think that it's actually really scientific. Billy Crudup does a phenomenal job of embodying that person and what he went through, and where they sort of dive into the factor that he wants to be a psychologist, but he also actually wants to be part of the experiment at the same time, and he doesn't know how to separate both worlds. As for the college students who are being experimented on, they have a phenomenal cast. This to me was sort of like a Band of Brothers cast, and where years from now I think we're going to be looking back at this just like in Band of Brothers and be like, hey look, Tom Hardy, James McAvoy, they were all little parts in this movie. Here you have a bunch of those type of actors, and we're sure we've seen them in like Sky High, Mud, The Flash, It Follows, Me and Earl, The Maze Runner, Rico from Hannah Montana, and there's even Val Kilmer's kid in there. But a lot of these actors are definitely the future of Hollywood, and it's really cool to see them early on in a movie all together, and they do a really good job. Obviously some are going to have more screen time than others. Ezra Miller would be like the main guy that you're really focusing on as a prisoner, and there are points where I would say, as much as I love this movie, that he was a little bit over the top. He was hamming it up at points, and he was sort of like, this
is all real. They won't let you go. They won't let us leave. Let me out of here! I want out! I want out!
But then, as I always do, I take a day or two to sort of search up the movie, especially if it's based off of true events. And to my surprise, here is footage of the guy he was portraying.
You don't know, I mean, God. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm burning up inside, don't you know?
So a role that seemed like he was hamming up was actually sort of portrayed in the correct way, because this dude went super crazy and was very over dramatic. However, out of the performances, the one that I liked the most was Ty Sheridan, because he was calm, he was collective at points, but it was the things that he felt. It was the way that he portrayed the anger and the frustration that he was facing that I felt was the most engaging. However, moving on to the way it all builds up on itself, this is a story that is so absurd, it's unbelievable. It's still absurd, but it's unbelievable how well they're able to portray it on screen, and where it doesn't feel like the person who's directing this movie is manipulating the stuff to make it more, appealing to an audience. I went back and looked at all the documentary and stuff. The lines that they say in this movie are direct from the footage that they actually captured, the events that happened. There's a specific moment in where they had this very Singing in the Rain type moment with Amazing Grace. I'm like, this is obviously manufactured to be more manipulative for the audience, and no, that is all true. That's what makes it so crazy, and the way that it's portrayed, the way that it builds upon itself, it's sort of like a film like Compliance, where you can't believe that things are happening, yet it's crazy enough and it scares you because it seems real. And a lot of that deals with how insane they actually went with the details. The cell looks exactly the same as what it did in The Experiment. The clothing, all of the stuff that they do for this movie, attention was really put into this film, and the way that it develops is done in a fashion, and even the way that they shoot it is done in a way where you are not necessarily the prisoner. It's not shot in that very grungy style like in, I would say, like 71 or Starred Up or any type of movie like that, where you are supposed to be looking at it from the prisoner's point of view. Here you are looking at it from the observer's point of view. They have these shots that feel like they are rats in a maze. You're seeing it from the top, you're seeing how close everything is, and it is beautifully shot. It invests you in the film, and I'm telling you, this is one of the most engaging movies, and where even for people like myself who go into movies going, well, I know how things are going to turn out, it's even more amazing that it still engages you. And obviously, if you can't tell, I adored this movie in the way that it was executed. Obviously, it's not a feel-good movie. It's not one that's very pleasant, but it's the way that they execute it that is so engaging, and is the reason that I loved it. And even more so was getting towards the end, I was just like, how are they going to end this? Are they going to do the whole title thing where they just tell you the experiments ended here and this is what happened to the people? Are they going to be very high in the exposition and had this whole thing where it's like, this is what we learned from this experiment and this is what we got out of it? No, instead, they continue just quoting verbatim what these people actually went through from interviews. And the last line that they end on it summarizes everything so perfectly that it just slaps you in the face. Overall, I obviously highly recommend this movie. Go watch it. It's super engaging. Study the experiment if you don't know about it. Look into it, or look into it afterwards to see how even crazier it is that they didn't manipulate everything in this movie to be like, all right, we're going to take this true story, but make it a little bit more drastic so audiences like it. No, this story is crazy enough, and it is adapted to perfection in my opinion. Definitely watch it. Let me know your thoughts on it. We can discuss it down below in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.